would like, first of all, to introduce Excellencies, distinguished guests, and all here, the people. And I'm very honored to be invited here by the CGSS. I have never been in this region of the world before, and I am not a very experienced speaker, but I'm going to try my best. I am better working at the computer writing books. I'm convinced that most of you believe that the Mumbai attack was an inside job and that Pakistan had nothing to do with that. You believe that, but believing and knowing is a different thing. Between belief and knowledge, there is a big gap. What I want to do is to transform your belief into knowledge. But not only that, I would like to transform your knowledge into conviction, such a conviction that will allow you to stand upright and to say to the entire world that India has accused Pakistan unjustly, maliciously, and dangerously, and that the facts of the matter is you possess the truth that it was an Indian job. It means that transforming your knowledge into a conviction which will allow you to stand up in the United Nations and in whichever fora that you have to be and to know the facts. Now, I did not write my book for Pakistan, nor for India. It was a completely different project. The project was basically begun with my investigation of 9/11, of the acts of 11 September. When I discovered that the acts of 11 September was not an action by Osama bin Laden, nor by Islamic fundamentalists, but most probably an inside job by the American regime. When I discovered that, after 10 years of investigation, I began to investigate other terrorist attacks imputed to Muslim fundamentalists, like the London attacks of 2005, Djerba in Tunisia, Istanbul, Amman, and I wanted to write an anthology about the different attacks, comparing the attacks, their criteria, their characteristics, and try to find out whether there is a common thread between all these attacks, which eventually I found. I'm going to come to it a little bit later. And said that in that kind of series, I came upon the Mumbai attacks, which was for me just a case study among many others. But this case study had these features that it transcended 50, 60, 70 pages of a chapter and became a book of 900 pages because it was an extremely complex operation for which there was a lot of materials which could be drawn into the investigation and presented to the public information. So my entire work I carried out from my home in Germany. I never set foot in India. I never set foot in Pakistan. And I could carry out all that work using only publicly available information to demonstrate that what India has said about Pakistan, about all this operation, is a lie from A to Z. There is not a single fact, I think, in the entire official narrative which is fitting. Now, I am not here to defend the political interest of Pakistan. I have no knowledge of Pakistan. I have never have any relation with Pakistan nor with India. So I'm truly a neutral person, but only in that respect, because I am not neutral. I'm standing for truth and justice. So in that respect, I'm not neutral. I have all my life worked for truth and justice. These are my guidelines. And so every work which has been done in political investigation has been led by these ethical norms and human rights. And human rights, I will come to human rights at the end of my lecture. Now, let me begin with the facts of the matter, because I think that we have a lot of material to cover, and I beg for your indulgence and for your patience, because I can only go within 1 hour of extremely little of the materials, because I have been investigating that extremely thoroughly. See, I think that as much as I know, there is no book and no work which has been as thorough about the Mumbai attacks as my book. I don't say that in order to compliment myself, but I think it's a fact. I know the literature. I know also 2 authors in India which have done very good work. Mr. Mushrif in Mumbai and Mrs. Vinita Kamte in Pune have written critical books about Mumbai. And I have been in contact with both persons, and they encouraged me to continue that work. So what I'm doing is basically is building upon their own research. And it is not an indictment of India, it is an indictment of the Indian elite, the Indian politics, the Indian leading class, which have been basically betrayed the people of India. So the victims in Mumbai were mainly Indians, not Pakistanis. Pakistan basically is off the question. It is not even considered, in my opinion, at all as a player in that, except the fact that India is accusing Pakistan. But basically the victims are our brothers and sisters in India. And this is my perspective. So, okay, let's begin. Okay, just to revise very fast the official account of Mumbai. We said the official account said that it was conducted between 26th and 29th of November 2008, and that it lasted about 59 hours. This is the official time. Yes. Officially, the operation was carried out in 8 places in Mumbai, where about 10 gunmen were deployed to these places. The official number of fatalities was 162, with just over 300 injured. It was claimed by the Indian government that the gunmen came by sea from Karachi. What is it? Yeah. Yes, and it was claimed, it was stated that over 1,000 military and commandos, Indian commandos, were fighting these 10, or let's say 8, because 2 of them were already killed, allegedly, in the first hours. So we had more than 1,000 commandos, Indian commandos, trained commandos, which had to fight 8 amateur or whatever we want to call amateur gunmen ensconced in 2 hotels in one Jewish center. Okay, this already places our question. How come that you need 1,000 commandos to fight for 3 days, 8 people in hotels? But this is just the first question. It is not really relevant to our discussion now. I will divide my lecture into 4 sections. The first one will be the initial facts and accusations. We'll go rather fast about it. The second part of it, the section, will be the attacks themselves and their peculiarities, some very anomalies. The third one will be the investigation of the Mumbai attacks by the Indian authorities and the trial of Ajmal Kasab. And the fourth section, will deal with the state's motives, the motives of India, the motives of the United States, the motives of Pakistan. And at the last section, I will also address some of these geostrategical aspects which have been discussed this morning. Now, section 1, initial facts. The first news, which were stated by Indian officials of the state of Maharashtra, were that 9 terrorists were arrested. This was not just a rumor. This was confirmed by high officials of the state of Maharashtra, the names of which I can cite to you, but it is not really relevant at this point. 9 were arrested. Now, this news disappeared like nothing. After 2-3 days, there was no talk anymore of 9 arrested. There were 9 killed. Now, the question is, were the news of 9 arrested the true news? If so, if they were arrested and they were dead, were they killed under custody? We don't know. However, important here is the fact that officials relying on police information said that we have 9 people under custody. These are a fact. It was reported not only in Indian media, but also in the BBC in England. So we have this fact, which has not been reported, I think, in Pakistani media. There were no proper identification of the bodies of these people who were allegedly Pakistani. Now, identification is a much more complex thing than many people believe. First of all, there was nobody who identified or saw anybody of these people killed, neither in the hotels nor nowhere. So we have 9 bodies which are alleged to be Pakistanis, but nobody has seen them being killed. There is no witness of their killing. So there is no witness that they have been in the locations where the attacks took place. I'm stating here a fact. It is not a conjecture, it's not an inference, it is a fact which has been confirmed by the judgment on Ajmal Kasab. The judgment says that there was no witness to the killing of these people. Secondly, there is no evidence that the bodies of the people who were presented later had been recovered from the scenes of the crime, because the movement of the bodies was not recorded. There was no effort to document the scene of crime, like is normally in a case of murder. You take photos, you have measurements, and so on. There was no information about the documentation of the scene of crime. So we don't know whether bodies which were later presented as Pakistanis had at all come from the places where the attacks took place. This is a fact. It's not a conjecture. A third thing, the identification itself. How do you identify a body? Well, if a person, you find a body and you don't have any documents or falsified documents on the person, how do you identify? Well, one way is to call the family or to try to find out who to whom is related. But there was no efforts of that kind. It was just stipulated as a fact that they were Pakistanis. And this stipulation relied on one single element, what Ajmal Kasab allegedly said to the police. And Ajmal Kasab didn't know the real names of the people, so he said, one is Ahmed and one is Hassan, I don't know exactly the names. And that was basically just the names which were allegedly belonging to these bodies. But we don't know. There was no effort, basically, to identify, no effort with the Pakistani government, no effort to get to the families. Nobody claimed the bodies, which is very important. Nobody claimed the bodies of these people. So we don't know. Maybe these bodies were brought from some region in India, from morgue, and presented as Pakistanis. I don't know. But we have to take that into consideration as a possibility. So we don't have at all an idea who these people were. So the entire story about Pakistanis being there is completely... I could stop my lecture at this point because that's finished. But I will continue to present you all the case. Already at that point, we have a big question mark about the narrative, the official narrative. British citizens. Have anybody here heard that it was reported in the first days that some of the attackers were British citizens, British Pakistanis? Does anybody have heard that? Well, this was reported by no less than British newspapers. The Daily Mail said that 7 of the gunmen were British Pakistanis. And they even reported from which cities in Britain these people came. There were 2, I think, from Bradford and 1 from this state. So the British Mail had the information. Whether it's true or not, I cannot tell you. But this was reported in the Daily Mail in Britain. It was also cited by the BBC. And it was confirmed by one Indian authority. So we have that information. Now, the question is, did the Daily Mail, did the BBC lie, invent that story? And if not, who provided that information to the BBC and to the Daily Mail? This is a question which I think everybody is entitled to know, because usually newspapers don't invent such a story. Now, if this is possible, if this was the case, then it was no even Indians, no Pakistanis, it was the British commandos. Now, I don't know if this is so true or not, whether this is disinformation. But the question should be resolved. Yes, as everybody knew, before the end of the attacks, as I said, took 59 hours. Before the end of the attacks, Prime Minister Singh of India already suggested that the attack was done by foreigners and suggested that it came from Pakistan. Now, how could he, before even the people were identified, allegedly identified, I say, before of that, could already state that? Not only that, he used the plural we. We will take certain measures, implying that his cabinet had already prepared the measures to carry out after the attacks. I cannot say that, I cannot prove it, but the way he formulated his accusations and his statements of intent implies that he had already particular measures in mind as a sequel to the attacks. Everybody can read exactly what he said. I cite it in my book. The opposition at that time, including Modi, called the attack an act of war. Now, an act of war has very strong implications in international law, because an act of war triggers Article 51 of the UN Charter, self-defense, and would have, in fact, allowed India to resort to the use of force against Pakistan. Happily, the government of India did not do it, but there were efforts to contrive, to construe the attack as an act of war. Of course, it was ridiculous. However, we find that that kind of terminology again cited in the judgment of Ajmal Kasab, in which the prosecution at least, was talking about an act of war, and the judge, Tahiliani, accepted that. He didn't really object to that. So there was an attempt really to overblow the attack, whatever its reason, and we see here an intent to create a casus belli. So let's pursue. Yeah. Now, after analyzing the Mumbai attacks, I found out that there were in fact two series of attacks. One I will call the domestic attacks, and the other one the international attacks. The domestic attacks are characterized by the fact that the victims were practically all of them normal Indian citizens. And the international attacks were on the luxury hotels, on a cafe frequented by visitors, by tourists, and the Jewish center. So we had basically two sets of attacks, which I call the domestic international. Now, these two sets of attacks had different goals, different teams, but they must have been coordinated. There could not be a coincidence that you had two sets of terrorist attacks at the same time, at the same hour, without a coordination. So my theory is that you had two command centers. One command center for the domestic operation, one command center for the international operation, but in a coordinated way. That means logically that the entire operation in Mumbai was carried out by one mind, by one planner. It could not be two operations, completely distinct operations. And this is a very important point, as we will see through our discussion. I will now go a little bit through the domestic operation. Domestic operation was carried out basically in four locations. The CST railway station terminus, I don't know how it is called in Indian, but CST probably everybody understands, the railway station where a lot of people, just normal passengers, were killed. The second location was the Kama Hospital for women and children, which is not far from the railway station. The third place of operation was outside the Kama Hospital, one street further, where Herman Karkare, Ashok Kamte, and Vijay Salaskar, three high-ranking officers, were assassinated, and their assistants. And the fourth attack place were near the cinema, the metro junction, where people were shot from a police car. People who were standing on the street were shot from a police car, allegedly driven by the terrorists. And then at the end, the two alleged terrorists were nabbed at Girgaon Chowpatty, where they were killed. Originally, the original story were both of them killed, and then later the story changed that one of them was survived, and he was Ajmal Kasab. Okay. Now, these locations, there are four locations. I'm going to talk about four locations, leaving outside the Girgaon Chowpatty case. What is interesting here, that if we are looking at the red line shows the official timings of these different attacks. Now, these are not officially proven timings, but these are basically what the judgment tells us and so on, without any substantiation. However, for each of these attacks, you have witnesses who said in newspaper reports and other, not one or more witnesses, that the attack, for example, at the CST began before the official time and continued beyond the time where the official time ended. It means the attack in the CST went over a certain time. I don't see it so well here from here. My eyes are not so good. But you see the black line continues until about 11 or 11:30. Officially, the attack on CST ended around 10:15 in the evening. And then the team from there moved by foot to Kama Hospital to conduct their attacks there. However, the witnesses said shooting continued at the CST railway stations. And I can cite exactly in my book, I cite the names of the witnesses, where it was published and so on. It is nothing really special about it. The same happened in Kama Hospital. The Kama Hospital action began before the official timing. The official timing said that Kama Hospital attack began about 10:30. In fact, Rakesh Maria, who was the chief of the police in Mumbai, he said he sent people there at 10:29. But witnesses said the attacks began already around 10 o'clock around Kama Hospital, outside Kama Hospital. In fact, the gunmen, whoever they were, killed there a bell vendor. I don't know exactly what bell is, but it's probably some food or some beverage. And he killed this guy, this innocent guy, and he killed 2 guardians. They killed some guardians. And then the shooting in the hospital continued until the early morning hours. This was reported by TV stations in Mumbai. So the shooting continued for many hours, beyond those hours where the team allegedly were already intercepted at Girgaon Chowpatty. The same now, if we're looking at the killing of Karkare, the killing of Karkare could not have happened by the same team which was at CST and the same team which was in Kama Hospital. As we see, the timing makes it impossible. So they were a third team, first team in CST, another team in Kama Hospital, a third team to assassinate the officers, and then they were shooting at the metro junction, which according to witnesses began before that timing. So we had the fourth team. So if we are looking at the domestic operation, we must conclude that there were at least 4 teams operating to conduct the domestic operation, which in my opinion is not a fact. My opinion was aimed at eliminating Hemant Karkare. This is obvious from the design of this operation, that the entire operation, domestic operation, was fixed to kill him. Now, possibly even the CST operation might have been part of that design, such as bringing him to the CST and having him being killed by chance in that operation. I cannot say. This is conjecture. What is not conjecture is what I display on that diagram, which means that there could not be one team, as it is alleged officially, the team of Ajmal Kasab and his partner, Ismail, which went from one place to the other and killed people. So that story is absolutely negated by that information. And that information is based on clear testimonies by many, many witnesses. So if we accept that description, that there were more teams, it conflicts with the official account of one team. And on that basis alone, we have to consider operation as a contrived story. Because if that story is contrived, the entire story, which was planned by the same people, must also be contrived. Now, I don't want to go into the details of the domestic operation. It will take us the entire day. And I will just move to the international one. The story of Karkares killing, everybody can read it in the book. There is an entire chapter about it. Karkares, by the way, was threatened many times by his opponents. The person who is now playing the role of Prime Minister of India, I say playing the role, Mr. Modi, he called Karkares a traitor when he was in opposition. Now, treason is a crime. People can be sentenced to death. So calling a person a traitor in India was basically like a green light to eliminate the person. And this is the person of Modi who said that. Okay. The international operation was carried out in 4 locations. The Leopold Cafe, which I have never been there, but I have been reading. It is a historical cafe. Many tourists go there. And the 2 luxury hotels, Taj Mahal and Oberoi Trident, and the Jewish Center. I'm going to just go a little bit fast through the different attacks and just mentioning some of the salient points. In Leopold, we have the question how long this shooting took place. The police and the officials say, 10 minutes. But witnesses say it took 25 up to 45 minutes, and the police did not really bother. There were also witnesses who say there were not 2 people, but 3 or 4 or even 5 people, 5 gunmen. There was one witness who said the gunmen were 3 of them, they came with a motorbike. So we have different stories by witnesses, which we cannot, of course, evaluate. We cannot decide. Witnesses can be wrong, of course, but the fact that the witnesses said that create a question. Now, these questions were not followed up by the court, which normally should have done that. They should have invited these witnesses to come to court, to be questions, cross-questions, and say, did you see 3, did you see 4, and so on. By the way, I didn't mention it before, that practically none of the witnesses which saw anything in CST or in Kama hospital were invited to court to testify. So the court basically eliminated all those who had anything to say factually or important. They were just ignored. Some witnesses from Leopold said that the attackers looked European. Maybe they looked European, maybe. I mean, some of you people look European, they are Pakistanis. So I would not put so much emphasis on it, but this is one question. And at least 2 said that the gunmen sat and had a meal and ate in the restaurant and drank in the restaurant. And after that, after they ate and drank, they were very happy. They took out the Kalashnikovs and began to shoot. Now, this is very, very odd. However, I cannot judge such testimonies, but these testimonies should be at least investigated. But no investigation of that kind took place. Yeah, Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is one of the most known attacks. It lasted 59 hours. Most of the information which we have seen in public relates to the first night or even the first hours. There is hardly any information in public domain about the remaining 48 hours. It's very, very strange. There is a book quite known, by the way, called The Siege by 2 British journalists, called, I think, The Siege, about the Taj Mahal attack. This book devotes only very few pages to the 48 hours, and most of the book is dealing just with the first hours. So there is basically a cover-up, a wall of silence about what happened there. Not a single witness came to court to say, I saw the gunman kill a certain person. Now, we have in the Taj Mahal attacks, we have 35 fatalities. Now, of these 35, about a third were staff members, thereof 6 cooks or chefs. But not a single person was invited to court to say, I have seen the gunman kill Mr. So-and-so, or even without name. I saw the gunman kill a person who is looking old, he was sitting there and he was killed. No, not a single one. Nor were anybody invited to court to say, I saw the commando kill one of the terrorists. So in court, not the circumstances of death of these 35 people was not established. The court did not establish the circumstance of death of 35 people, a case of mass murder. This is one of the main functions of a criminal court, to establish the circumstances of death in a murder case. Not a single one was. Yes, according to different reports in the media and corroborated by police forces, that the gunmen were masked. We could not see their faces. Now, this is possible. This is possible because the Marcos, or the Marine operatives, which were one of the group who came to fight the terrorists, they are not mixed with the NSG. This Marine Corps, this Marcos, came from near Mumbai, and they are usually with beards and they are masked. So maybe this MP mixed these Marine Corps with the terrorists. Now, if such a mix-up could take place, maybe all the gunmen were part of the commandos. So we don't know. But this mix-up itself is very interesting. So were they masked or were they not masked? We don't know, but that information should have been examined. Yes, at the Oberoi, very interesting. At the Oberoi, one of the, not the commandos, it was a person who basically joined the commandos in looking for the gunmen, so-called. And he reported in court, mind you, that the gunmen were allowed to sleep overnight. There was no any more fighting with the gunmen. From 11 or from 9 o'clock in the evening until 7 o'clock in the morning, the gunmen were allowed to sleep in the hotel room because they have to take a rest, like everybody else has to sleep in the night, even the gunmen. So the Indian commandos just left them in the room, stood there outside the room and waited until the morning and then continued. Believe me, this is not an invention of Mr. Davidsson. You can read it in the judgment. What does it mean? For me, it means that these people were not fighting gunmen. They were fighting basically, it's called red team, blue team. There were two teams belonging to the Indian commando structure, which was staging an operation. Two interesting details which I found in my research is first that there was an entire CNN team in the hotel, living in the hotel during the attacks. There were, I don't know if it is a rule of the CNN to put their journalists in luxury hotels. Maybe it is. Then it's no problem. But if it is not the rule, why were there 5 or 6 CNN journalists staying in the Taj? Were they there in order to report? I don't know. Another thing which I discovered, which was quite interesting, but maybe it has no bearing on the attacks, is that Mr. Henry Kissinger was in the Taj 3 days before for conference. Now, Henry Kissinger, everybody knows here probably, was not a very big angel. He organized all kinds of bad things in the world. Well, he was meeting Mr. Tata in the Taj 3 days before the attacks. What they discussed, I don't know, but this is quite interesting. Okay, so I go on. Three characteristics for all these attacks. Normally, when you have an attack going over such a long period, the court at least established a timeline when the attack started, when this episode started, ended, and so on. A timeline up to the minute. Now, for none of these episodes has a timeline being issued. And all the times which have been published are extremely variable. So if you look at my book, you find that there is basically no clear idea when a certain attack started, when it finished. The court did not publish any. And I'm absolutely certain that investigators in the police in Mumbai have a timeline, because you cannot make an investigation. Even if you are creating a false narrative, you have to have a base timeline in order not to make mistakes in your own false narrative. So a timeline must exist somewhere, but it was never revealed for any of these episodes. I mentioned already the circumstance of death. Also, the number of gunmen was variable. Some people said there were 4, some said 6, some 8. I don't know. There was not even a fixed number of gunmen. There was one fake story which was reported, particularly in the West, that the gunmen targeted particularly Americans and British people. This was a fake news. I demonstrated in the book how this fake news came about, but this was intended to incite people in the West, saying, you look at these Muslims, they are attacking Brits and Americans, which was a false thing. There were actually a few Americans who died there, but they were not targeted as such. I mean, you see the numbers, you will see that. Going to this Jewish center called Nariman House or Chabad Center, it is a modest hostel for Jews and for Israelis who come to India, run by a rabbi, very modest home or house located in an unpaved street in Kolaba, which even the locals do not fight. It was not a very obvious building. So those who choose to attack this building did it very purposefully to make look like the Islamic people who want to attack Jews. It's very clear, because this was on the front pages in American newspapers read by a lot of Jews. So say, you see, the Islamic attack the Jews. So the attacks on this Jewish center was basically for American consumption. Now, we don't know exactly the details. There were very murky details about this attack. There were no autopsies. This attack on the Jewish center was organized as a spectacle. People came from all over India just to look at the NSG doing this operation with helicopters. And so basically came from far away just to look at it. So basically it's organized for public consumption. How many people were killed there, by whom, and so on, we don't know. In any case, the attackers were also offered a siesta. Afternoon, for 2 hours, we don't fight. Please, you can rest. So we have that. Before going to the next section, I would like to discuss a little bit more detailed the phone calls. There were, in fact, 3 series of phone calls which are important for us. The first phone calls were the phone calls made allegedly by the gunmen to India TV. What is important with these phone calls, there are 2 things which I think were important for us. First of all, that India TV should put on air, on national TV, without due diligence. People they don't know. Suppose me now I'm going to go and on the national TV here in Pakistan and say, hello, I am a terrorist, I would like to go to talk to you, and you put me online on national TV. Yes, of course not. I will call myself a German TV and say, I'm Mr. Davidsson, I wrote a book, absolutely shattering book. We're not interested. So to get an interview on TV, you have to go through many steps, particularly national TV. You don't get on air like this. And these people got on air after 5 minutes. So, just asking. Now, we don't know from where they called. We don't know who they were. And the TV basically didn't bother. However, this is one thing. Secondly, what is interesting is the TV anchor asked one of them, what are your aims? What are your demands? And these terrorists, which were prepared allegedly for I don't know how many years in Pakistan, had to consult somebody and ask, I'm sorry, what should I say? What should I say? What should I say? And then, okay, we want to release all the prisoners. So he didn't know for what he was fighting. Now, of course, it's a joke, basically. But of course, the Indian TV did not pursue the issue. So these calls were basically, they were flops. Then the main phone calls were those allegedly made by the handlers with the operatives. And this is often used by the Indian government as evidence for Pakistani involvement. Now, there are a few things which I would like to bring about these phone calls. First of all, they were a very complex operation to hide the location from where the phone calls were made. And believe me, you know who organized the phone calls? Well, the FBI. The FBI organized the phone calls to be transmitted from somewhere through an exchange in the United States, in New Jersey, to Mumbai. So the FBI was involved in the organization of these phone calls. I don't want to go into details here because it will take us a long time. I discuss it in very much detail in my book. The FBI, this is what I'm saying, has been corroborated, has been by the Supreme Court of India. It is not something which I invented. The FBI was basically the intermediary and intercepted all the phone calls. So this is one point. Now, what is important in the phone calls is also the contents. There are 3 types of contents which are mind-blowing. And I just wonder, why did they publish these transcripts? Because they are absolutely surreal. One is what I call the micro-handling of the operatives. What I call micro-handling is, example, one handler would tell I don't know where it is here. Yeah, I'd like just to quote from the transcript, with your permission. Handler talking. How many magazines do you have? Put your magazine on burst mode. Each of you have 4, right? Put your magazine on burst mode. Put your magazine, your burst mode, each of you load the magazine and put your gun on burst when you have to fire. Sit in a manner that you may not be within the sight of someone coming in. Sit behind some sofa with the barrel of the gun sticking out. When you are throwing grenade outside, then one of you should stand behind the other. I mean, open the door and throw it, and don't throw it on your own feet. Now, do you know any handler talking to a commando not to throw the grenades on your own feet? I mean, come on. I mean, I'm not a military person. I am a musician. But this is flying to the eyes. It is absolutely ridiculous. But this is what you read in the transmission. Now this I call micro-handling, and there are more of this kind. This is just one example. The second anomaly, or the very odd characteristics of these connections, of these conversations, are the religious exhortations. Now, let me cite what the handler told to operatives allegedly fighting for their lives against the enemy in India. So, here, the handler. Do not forget the prayer that we made you learn. Second, pray. It is time for prayer, and keep your promise to Allah. Third, pray. Prayer at this time is very readily accepted. You know, we are the slaves of Allah, whom He has sent for expansion of the true faith. I mean, death as a martyr is a big thing. But the style of martyrdom should be such as to put fright in the heart of the enemies, and that is a style of martyrdom. What I mean is there nothing to fear. The message of the martyr must be put forward. Allah has completely cleared paradise for you. Everyone has to go there. Getting shot by a bullet is to be successful. Allah is waiting for you. Now, suppose you are fighting for your life and you hear somebody, your superior, tell you that kind on the telephone or whatever. What you would tell him? Go to hell. Because you are supposed to fight. You're not supposed to hear a sermon, a religious sermon. Then you go to a mosque. But you don't go to fight there and hear your superior talk about Allah. I think that you military people know what you are saying when you have talking to people on the field, on the combat. You don't tell them about. You are not talking like them like a sermon of the mosque. And the third feature of this conversation was their inside knowledge. So the handler. Prime Minister of India has asked for a helicopter to get a minister out of the Taj. Now, think of the guy sitting in Pakistan, knowing that the Prime Minister of India asked for a helicopter to get the minister out. How would you know that? And another one, handler. There are 3 ministers and 1 secretary of the cabinet in the Taj. Come on, how do they know it? I tell you how they know it. Because the handlers were in the Taj. So, now, about the I made that one. The third section is the investigation and the trial. Investigation trial. I'm going to go very fast as possible. First of all, the defense lawyers. The investigation. There was a so-called investigation, which was not by the police, which was a committee of 2 people. The committee of 2, it is called. There were 2 insiders who were basically tasked by whitewashing everybody. So the committee of 2, the Ram Pradhan committee, so-called, make a report which we can ignore. Ajmal Kasab, so-called, made a confession first to the police at the first night, which was leaked to the press, but was denied by the police that it was a confession. And then he confessed allegedly behind closed door to a magistrate 3 months after he was detained, before he was presented to a lawyer. So his confession behind closed door was basically what was reported later in the press. In court, at one time, he denied his confession. He said it was under duress. Later, he accepted the confession, but the confession itself is, I don't think it was ever published, the official confession, but the one which was, I may be wrong, but whatever confession he did, we cannot really judge how much of it was just dictated to him it was never published, and what we know about the so-called confession, that it was basically formulated in a form that nobody would orally say. It was very, very well constructed, like a memorandum, like something which was formulated by somebody, and maybe he was asked to sign it. We don't know. But of course, this kind of confession has no value, because it was done behind closed doors. The defenders, there were people who asked to be defenders of Ajmal Kasab. One was killed, others were threatened, and the one who was at the end accepted as a defender was rejected then later by the court, was thrown out. So there were extremely pressure that he will not be given a defender. Not only that, the police chief himself, which conducted the investigation of the Mumbai attack, Rakesh Maria, he was a police chief. He was in command of the police center on the attacks. He was delegated to investigate. So he was commanded to investigate an operation in which he was himself involved. This man said that he is convinced of the guilt of Ajmal Kasab before the trial. And he said, we have to protect him against my man, because my man would just kill him. So before he was even tried, the officials of India decided that he is guilty. Now, this is completely a violation of every standard of due process. Completely. It is a complete violation when state officials declare a person already guilty. As you can read, everything is all clear. These intimidation acts were really physical. Some of them by this Shiv Sena, you say? Yeah, they pelted houses of defendants and so on. I mean, it was really, really threatened. I wouldn't like to be in their hold. And yes, as I said before, Prime Minister Singh already accused Pakistan at the end. Lawyers were harassed and threatened, no timelines. Yes, witnesses were coached. There is evidence in my book about witnesses who were really coached over months what they should say in court. There was particularly important is one, the only witness who said he saw people land at the coast. So the entire story of gunmen coming from Karachi is built on one testimony in court, and that person was coached for months by the police before he appeared in court. He said it himself, his own words. He said, I was going to the police every day, and I hope I will do it correctly in court. Yeah. What else? I mentioned already a few things. Yeah. I don't go through the trial. It's very, very long. What is deplorable about the judgments and about justice system is the High Court of Bombay and the Supreme Court of India basically corroborated this injustice by the trial court, and even lauded the trial court judge for his excellent work. This was a shameful performance by the Supreme Court of India, to which I had a lot of admiration before. I'm sorry to say. Now, I'm going to go to the last section. Oh, here we have a photo of the prosecutor who is very happy after Ajmal Kasab was executed. You see how he performed in front of the camera, and he just performed like this, see, jubilating that the last piece of evidence was eliminated. The last piece of evidence was Ajmal Kasab. It was eliminated, he cannot talk anymore. Now, let us go into the fourth section, India's motives. Here, before I was told that India motives was mostly Pakistan. I beg to differ. There were many more motives, and I'm not certain that Pakistan was the primary motive. Let us go a little bit through them. First of all, the attacks permitted finally substantial increases in police and military budgets. We're talking about increases of the order of 30%. These increases were demanded by the police, they were demanded by the military forces, and the attacks on Mumbai were the trigger for these increases. If you see the justification given for these increases, the justification was exactly the Mumbai attacks. The second motive was pushing through the development of the security industry. Now, the security industry is a novel industry which began around 9/11. It has boomed since, and if you want to earn a lot of money, you just invest in security shares and you will become rich. The security industry now makes about turnover about $400 to $500 billion a year globally. So if I've seen market researches about the security industry, and it is a booming industry. Also in India, you have people from the security industry which were interviewed by the Times of India shortly after the attacks of Mumbai, and they said they get orders one after the other from hotels, from restaurants. Everybody orders security cameras, security people, and so forth and so on. So this was a big business idea. This is another motive. The third motive was to galvanize the middle class of India to take a strong position on counterterrorism and on surveillance. Before the Mumbai attacks, the middle class of India was very apolitical. Many people didn't vote, or when they voted, they were not very much interested in national security. After Mumbai, there was a change, a paradigm among the middle class in India, which was represented, among other things, by demonstrations which were held in Mumbai by middle class people who never went to the street and demanded more security. So this was a very galvanizing operation, which reminds us of 9/11, which galvanizes the American people behind foreign policy. What am I doing here? Okay. Yes, I mentioned already the surveillance state. I think many people here downplay or don't realize the importance of the Big Brother society in India, which was basically pushed forward by Mumbai. The Big Brother society in India is a huge project which is also supported by the United States. And my guess is that the United States uses India as a huge laboratory to test out a surveillance state reaching 1 billion people. So the surveillance state has already many tentacles, many technological parts, but also huge political implications about the democracy in India. And I would like people to realize what we are talking about. We are not talking about only the Indian phenomena. We are talking phenomena which we have in Europe, where the European Union is pushing the concept of national security states in all member states. And every year you have a terror attack, so-called, used to justify more and more surveillance, more police prerogatives, and reductions of human rights. We have that phenomenon in Europe, we have that in the United States, we have it in India, we have it in Algeria, we have it in Russia, we have it in many countries. We are joining together under the banner of combating terrorism, but mainly to protect the power that be. So this is another motive. Sorry, I went a little bit too fast. I would like at this point to mention a fact which is very much unknown here and otherwise. Very shortly after the attacks of Mumbai, the Federation of Indian Industrial and Commercial Enterprises, FICCI, called a conference on national security within a week or two. Now, a federation of industry and commerce, it's a business organization, a business federation. They called for a conference in New Delhi on national security very shortly. Now, as you know, everybody knows, to get people to come to a conference needs a preparation. You cannot call it for 1-2 weeks, but they did it within 2 weeks. And within 3 months, or less, 2 months, FICCI, this organization, this business organization, gave out a paper which I call marching orders to New Delhi. They gave the marching orders how to cope with terrorism. Now, think of that. This was not the IB, this was not the RAW, it was not the army. It was a business organization in India, one of the greatest, probably the greatest business organization, which issued a paper where it told the Indian government what to do on armed policy, on surveillance, on media, and so forth and so forth. It's a paper, I don't know, maybe 30 pages. Very detailed. It also had a section how to regiment the media in cases of terrorist attacks, to make pools of information so that information would not leak by some witnesses and so forth and so on. I look in very detail, and this was for me an eye-opener, where I saw that the business community in India was behind the national security agenda of the New Delhi government, and they gave the government marching orders. They did not say, we suggest that you do that. They said, you shall do it. You should do it. I mean, the language of this document is the language of marching orders. And this is basically also my opinion, that the marching orders in most countries are given by those who have the money. So we have here a very different perspective on the Mumbai attack, which I just left now for India. Now let us go to the US part, which is even less known. The US part begins with a very odd thing. The White House established within hours, or within maybe one day, a special task force on Mumbai. Now, Mumbai is not in the United States. It wasn't an attack on the United States. But the White House, I'm not talking about some local, the White House established a special task force, a crisis task force on Mumbai, during the attacks. And this task force worked for 6 months, 24 hours a day. Now, you can ask yourself, what the hell is the White House being concerned with some attack in Mumbai? We will come to it. Secondly, the New York Police Department showed a very keen interest in the Mumbai attacks, had a team from the New York Police Department going to Mumbai within days to interview people, police and so on. They were very keen on it and formulated a report, an analysis of this operation. And they made a seminar or a conference within about 1 or 2 weeks, 2 weeks in New York, analyzing the modus operandi of the attacks of Mumbai, invited so many people. The New York Police Department. The FBI did something similar. The FBI sent a person there when the attacks were still ongoing, sent a team there from Los Angeles FBI, and that team got access to all the materials, even to a Kassab. They could interview him for 9 hours, the FBI. No lawyer, no Indian lawyer could access him for months, but the FBI had access to him, private access for 9 hours. This is all public information. Now, you can ask yourself, what the hell is FBI involved in that? Well, the involvement, we can only conjecture. But what we do not need to conjecture is that due to the Mumbai attacks, there was a change in the identity of the Minister of Interior in India. The new Minister of Interior was Chidamraba. Okay. He opened the gates for the FBI. It was publicly said, admitted in the United States, that because he became Interior Minister, the FBI and the CIA and all that could now finally get a direct access to Mumbai police and so on. So basically he opened the gates of Indian security and law enforcement agencies to United States agencies, directly, not through the government, but directly. He did it. And I personally consider, I'm sorry, I consider that he was involved in the Mumbai operation. So remember that name. It's a very important one in this context. The Department of Homeland Security in America equally was very much interested in what happened in Mumbai. And there was a private company, which is now defunct, which issued also a very interesting report on the Mumbai attacks soon after that. And funnily enough, they gave to each team a name, which I saw nowhere. One team called Romeo, the other one called Tango 1, a certain Tango 2. Now, these kinds of names are names given usually by intelligence, by the intelligence service who do operations. Now, this private company gave these people these names. And it is very difficult to know why, who tasked them to do it, who gave them information. But all these information, FBI, New York Police Department, there was also a congressional hearing in January 2009, means just 1 month after, a congressional hearing about the Mumbai attacks. There was nothing of that kind after the attack in London in 2005. Nothing of that kind after the attack in Madrid, 2004. There was only after the Mumbai attacks. And my idea is, I'm sorry, it's just my guess, is that the Mumbai attacks was not only an operation of Indian forces, but a joint operation with America to pursue, to forward American interest and the relations between India and America. Now, whether Israel was also involved is possible. I don't know. There were some involvement, probably, but there is very little information I could use to say anything. But the American information is very important. And to finalize the American information is the fact that the coverage on the Mumbai attacks on American TV was unprecedented. This is not my word. It was from a student, I think a student in Britain or America who studied the coverage. He said this was unprecedented coverage of Mumbai about attacks outside the United States. So we have here very many elements point out to a common operation, US-Indian operation, which has the idea of furthering US interests in that region. Now, these interests are geostrategical, the control of the Indian Ocean, to block China, to create problems for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, to create disputes with Pakistan, to get the Americans inside to infiltrate the Indian forces, to increase defense cooperation, which was already grown between defense operation between India and America, to use India as a market for defense products, and to use, as I said before, India as a laboratory for a big brother society, And as it was said in a joint statement by Prime Minister Singh on November 8, 2010, they declared that counterterrorism, he and Obama declared that counterterrorism cooperation, quote, has become a pillar of the US-India cooperation. So, we have that, this global interests of US and India, which transcends largely your perception of the India-Pakistan conflict, which, in my opinion, is only part of the picture. I might be wrong, but this is how I perceive the thing after all this research, having also researched 9/11, London, and other things, and research also the work of the Security Council in the area of counterterrorism. So this is open for debate. Finally, a few words. There are the entire Mumbai operation has many features, many details. The problem is that if one focuses on all these details, it's very satisfying to say, here is the detail, here is the detail. But doing that, we miss focus. The focus, there is a focus. Like we see trees, one tree, but we miss the forest. Now, the forest in this case is just a concept. The concept is a concept called truth. Truth. Now, truth englobes everything which I am saying. I try to establish the truth through my research. Truth is for Pakistan an absolutely fantastic weapon. Truth. Now, Pakistan has now a mine of evidence against India. A mine of evidence that India has accused Pakistan wrongfully, maliciously, and endangers the relationships. Now, this evidence cannot be disputed. My book was issued 2 years ago. There was not a single person who has criticized a single sentence in the book. This is the same thing with other books I've published. There was no critic. Nobody said, this fact is wrong, this fact is wrong. People can discuss about conclusions, but the facts are there. So Pakistan has today an extremely large compendium of facts which it can establish internationally. We said the government of India has been lying through their teeth, not only about us, but to their own people. And we as Pakistanis are ready to help the Indian people to expose the deception committed against them by their own leaders. And we are generous enough not to think about ourselves, not to think that we have been maligned. We don't care. This is not important. We've been maligned. We have been maligned all the time. But we would like to join and to show solidarity with our brothers and sisters in India, which are being deceived in such a gross way by their own leadership. And I believe that Pakistan, if it capitalizes on that issue, can get out of a lot of problems. The truth is basically the key for Pakistan. Well, I think that I can thank you.